It was a bitter January morning in New York City, the kind where the subway tunnels feel colder than the streets above. Commuters hurried through the underground platforms, bundled in coats and scarves, heads down, just trying to get through another weekday. Trains roared past, screeching against metal tracks, and no one really paid attention to anyone else, until a sound broke through the usual rush. Not the sound of brakes or an overhead announcement. This was different. It was the sharp, strained cry of a woman. Then a baby's cry, piercing and raw. It happened on the downtown 6 train, somewhere between Union Square and Astor Place. Witnesses say a woman, disheveled and barefoot, appeared out of nowhere. Her face was pale, her clothes soaked, but her eyes held a wild kind of focus. No one knew who she was. She didn't ask for help. She didn't scream. She just sat on the floor of the train, hunched over, breathing heavily, and then, right there between 2 stops, she gave birth. People froze. Some backed away, others took out their phones, but one woman, an EMT off duty, rushed forward to help. She wrapped the newborn in her jacket and tried to speak to the mother, but the woman just stared down at the baby with a strange mix of calm and sadness. When the train pulled into the next station, the EMT called for emergency services. But by the time help arrived, the woman was gone. Just gone. No one saw her leave the train. No one saw her walk off the platform. The cameras didn't catch her exit. It was like she had vanished into thin air, leaving behind nothing but a baby wrapped in flannel and a note, written on the back of a subway map. It said, "Please take care of her. She's not mine." The authorities were baffled. The EMT kept the baby safe until the paramedics arrived, and they rushed the newborn to the hospital. The child was healthy, miraculously so. But the mystery of the mother sent shockwaves through the city. Who was she? Why did she say the baby wasn't hers? And how could someone disappear in the middle of a crowded train without a trace? Some said she was just another homeless woman who had reached a breaking point. Others claimed they had seen her days earlier, wandering the subways talking to herself. One man swore she had told him the baby wasn't meant for this world. A few whispered about strange sightings in the days before, a woman with hollow eyes, carrying nothing but a folded blanket, always looking over her shoulder. The police opened an investigation. The baby was placed in temporary care. But the woman, whoever she was, remained a ghost. The only clue beyond the note was a small symbol drawn on the back of the map. It wasn't any known writing, at least not at first glance. But someone would soon recognize it, and what they discovered would change everything. Because this wasn't just a story about a homeless woman. Or a subway birth. It was something much deeper. Something that had started long before that morning train, and would continue long after. And the woman who vanished? She wasn't running. She was hiding. The baby, a girl, was named Hope by the hospital staff. Nobody knew her real name, and there were no records of the birth. No fingerprints, no ID, nothing to trace back to the woman who had vanished. The note she left behind was now in an evidence locker, and the strange symbol on the subway map had become the only lead detectives had. It looked like a spiral, but with jagged edges, almost like a maze drawn in one continuous motion. No one could place its origin, not even experts in ancient symbols or street graffiti. It didn't match anything in known databases. Detective Maya Reeves was assigned to the case. She wasn't the kind of officer who usually handled missing person reports involving the homeless. But something about this case pulled her in. She'd seen a lot in her 12 years on the force, but this one felt different. Personal, even. When she visited Hope in the hospital, something stirred in her. The baby looked peaceful, but her eyes, deep brown and unusually alert for a newborn, held a weight Maya couldn't explain. She began piecing together surveillance footage, riding that same 6-train route over and over, asking questions most people didn't want to answer. Subway riders usually looked away when she brought up the strange birth. Some didn't want to remember. A few looked nervous, almost frightened. One older man said quietly, "I've seen her before. Always rides the last car. Talks to the air." She said she was running from them. When Maya asked who they were, he just shook his head and walked away. Meanwhile, Child Protective Services placed Hope with a foster family. The mother, Elaine, was a schoolteacher who'd lost her own child years earlier and felt an instant connection when she saw the baby on the news. She never planned to adopt so suddenly, but something in her heart told her this baby needed someone right now, not later. What Elaine didn't know was that the choice to take Hope in would soon entangle her in a story far stranger and more dangerous than she could imagine. Back underground, Detective Reeves found something chilling. An old maintenance worker at the Astor Place station led her to a hidden service tunnel, one that hadn't been used in years. He said he saw someone coming out of it just minutes after the mysterious birth, a woman, barefoot, limping, wrapped in a torn blanket. She disappeared into the crowd before he could say anything. Maya followed the tunnel's path and found a small, makeshift camp, an old mattress, some empty cans, and a notebook filled with symbols like the one on the map. Pages and pages of it, written in both pen and charcoal, sometimes with what looked like blood. There were no names. No explanations. But on the final page, in shaky handwriting, were the words, "They're listening underground." That night, Maya couldn't sleep. Her instincts told her this wasn't just a missing person case. And that symbol, it wasn't random. Someone had a reason for watching this woman. Someone wanted her found, or silenced. But why? And what kind of woman delivers a baby on a train, says it isn't hers, and disappears without a trace? Elaine tried to focus on her routines, packing lunches, grading papers, getting Hope to her regular checkups, but she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. At first, she thought it was just nerves. She wasn't used to being a foster parent, especially not to a child with such a strange beginning. But little things kept happening. Lights flickering at night. A black van parked across the street 2 days in a row. Once, she caught a man in a hoodie standing near her porch, pretending to check his phone, though he left the moment she opened the door. Hope, still only a few weeks old, had an uncanny stillness about her. She barely cried, rarely fussed, and often stared, long and focused, at spots on the ceiling as if she saw something no one else could. Elaine told herself it was just baby behavior, but deep down, it unsettled her. One evening, while rocking Hope to sleep, she found herself whispering, "Who are you really, sweetheart?" Not expecting an answer. But the baby blinked slowly, and smiled. A wide, knowing smile that didn't feel like a reflex. Elaine didn't sleep that night. At the same time, Detective Reeves was making progress, but it only led to more confusion. She managed to track down another witness, a teenage girl named Lacey who volunteered at a homeless shelter near Tompkins Square Park. Lacey claimed she had seen the mystery woman weeks before the subway incident. She called her the Whisper Lady because she always spoke in hushed tones to herself, repeating names, numbers, and dates. One day, Lacey said, she heard her whisper, January 10th. She must arrive alive. They can't find her before. Reeves took that seriously. January 10th was the day of the subway birth. Then came the call that chilled her. A pathologist from the hospital flagged something odd in the baby's blood work. Nothing dangerous, at least not at first glance. But Hope's DNA didn't match any database, not even for the mother. The woman who gave birth to her might not have been her biological parent after all. More troubling, a strange protein sequence kept showing up in Hope's blood, a sequence not typically found in newborns. The hospital called it a genetic anomaly, but Reeves had a different word for it: manipulated. Someone had been involved in this child's creation. Someone who knew what they were doing. And someone wanted it buried. Reeves took the notebook of symbols to a university linguist, who dismissed it at first, until she noticed patterns in the drawings. It wasn't a language exactly. It was more like code. And it wasn't ancient. It was new. Experimental. Possibly military. She suggested contacting someone from a classified program she'd once consulted on, but the moment she tried, her email account was shut down. Her phone froze. That same day, she found a small tracking device under her car. Meanwhile, Elaine noticed something else. Hope had started making sounds, not baby coos, but rhythmic hums. Like a pattern. Always at the same time of day. And one night, when Elaine recorded it on her phone, the audio file couldn't be played back. It glitched. The entire screen flashed white, then black. And Hope, wide-eyed, giggled at the screen as if she had made it happen. Elaine didn't tell anyone. Who would believe her? But deep down, she began to understand. Hope wasn't just a baby someone abandoned. She was part of something much bigger. Something someone wanted hidden, or silenced. Detective Reeves stood at the edge of the old subway tunnel, her flashlight beam dancing along the damp, graffiti-covered walls. The deeper she went, the colder the air became. She had gone back alone, against protocol, but something in her gut told her she didn't have time to wait for backup. A tip had come in, anonymous, through a burner phone, saying, "If you want to know who the baby is, follow the Whisper Lady's path." It led her here, to the same abandoned passage where the woman was last seen. Far above, Elaine was rocking Hope by the window when the power went out. The whole block went dark. Her phone had no signal. She looked outside and noticed the black van was back, engine still running. Two figures in dark coats stepped out and stood motionless across the street. Elaine's heart pounded. She backed away from the window, clutching Hope tighter. The baby stirred and let out a soft hum. Again in that strange, rhythmic pattern. It sounded almost like a signal. Down in the tunnel, Reeves stumbled upon a second room, hidden behind a rusted maintenance panel. Inside were discarded syringes, sealed vials, and a half-burned journal. Pages still intact described what appeared to be a series of underground medical trials. The subjects were all women. Homeless. Untraceable. There were photos, faces half obscured, but one image, partially charred, showed the woman from the train. Her name was written beneath it, Subject 09, Evelyn Grant. Reeves scanned the report quickly. Evelyn had been missing for over 2 years. She wasn't a random woman off the street. She had once worked in a biotech lab before vanishing without a trace. Suddenly, the tunnel lights flickered, and Reeves heard footsteps. Someone else was down there. She quickly killed her flashlight and ducked behind the wall. A pair of men passed by, speaking softly, their words echoing. They want the child tonight. Clean sweep. No witnesses. Reeves didn't breathe until they were out of earshot. Whatever this was, it wasn't just about one missing woman or a mysterious baby. There was a cover-up, and it was being cleaned with precision. Back at Elaine's home, the knocking started. Not loud, just a soft tap on the door. Over and over again. She grabbed a kitchen knife, trembling. She called 911, but the line was dead. She didn't know what else to do, until she remembered the notebook Detective Reeves had shown her weeks ago. She had snapped a photo of one of the symbols. She pulled up the image on her tablet and showed it to Hope, desperate. To her shock, the baby reached out and touched the screen. Instantly, the tablet blinked and displayed another symbol, one Elaine hadn't downloaded. Then a low humming filled the room, and a soft pulse of light glowed from the baby's blanket. The front door burst open. Elaine screamed, shielding Hope, but there was no one there. Just an eerie silence. Then, a voice behind her whispered, "You're not supposed to have her." She turned around slowly, and saw Evelyn. Pale, gaunt, wrapped in an oversized coat, and soaking wet. Her eyes were wild, but familiar. She held a finger to her lips and whispered, "They're coming for her. But she's the only one who can stop them." Before Elaine could respond, a loud crash came from the back of the house. Boots on the floor. Heavy, fast. Evelyn grabbed Hope from her arms and ran. Elaine shouted after her, but another figure appeared in the doorway, someone not from the street, but in a sleek black suit with a hidden earpiece and cold eyes. He stepped forward, slowly. "Where did she take the child?" Elaine's voice cracked. "Who are you?" He didn't answer. Outside, the hum in the air grew louder. Elaine backed away slowly, her heart thudding in her chest as the man in the suit scanned the room with cold, mechanical precision. He didn't even seem out of breath, despite the chaos he'd walked into. His eyes flicked to the now empty baby blanket on the floor, then to the tablet that still pulsed faintly with the strange glow. He picked it up, studied the symbol Hope had revealed, and whispered something into his earpiece. "She's with Subject 09. Moving north. Initiate lockdown," he said. Elaine's hands clenched into fists. "What do you want with her? She's just a baby." The man finally looked at her, and for a moment, something flickered behind his emotionless face, regret, maybe. Or recognition. "She's not just a baby," he replied. "And she was never supposed to be born." Then he walked out, leaving Elaine standing in a cold silence that felt heavier than before. She tried to follow, but by the time she reached the street, the van and the suited man were gone. No lights, no tire marks. Just the quiet hum of power returning to the neighborhood. Meanwhile, Evelyn moved through the subway tunnels with speed that didn't match her frail appearance. She held Hope close, whispering to her in a language that didn't sound like any Elaine had ever heard, soft, rhythmic syllables, like a lullaby and a code all at once. Hope stayed calm in her arms, eyes wide open, following the darkness as if she knew exactly where they were going. What Evelyn didn't know was that someone else was following her, someone who had been in the tunnels longer than either of them. He called himself Lark, and he was once part of the same biotech program that created Hope. But he had defected when he found out the truth, that the children weren't being saved, they were being programmed. Lark lived in the shadows now, off the grid, keeping track of each subject the agency had created. He thought Evelyn was dead. Seeing her alive, and carrying Hope, made his blood run cold. He watched from a distance as she reached an old steel door deep beneath Grand Central Station. She tapped a series of symbols onto a rusted keypad, and the door creaked open. Inside was a hidden lab. Or what was left of it. Broken monitors. Cracked tanks. Syringe trays tossed on the ground. And one last terminal still blinking faintly with power. Evelyn sat down, cradled Hope on her lap, and began typing furiously, feeding data into the system. Back at the precinct, Detective Reeves received a package with no return address. Inside was a flash drive and a photograph, Evelyn holding a baby. The timestamp was from 7 months ago. The image was tagged, Subject 0, Viable. Reeves plugged in the drive and found a video, grainy, surveillance-style footage from an underground lab. Scientists in hazmat suits. A child suspended in a glass pod. One of the researchers stepped forward and spoke to the camera. This is the final warning. Project Echo has been compromised. If Subject 0 escapes, the signal will activate. Signal? Reeves froze. That hum Elaine had mentioned. The same one she herself had recorded but couldn't trace. It wasn't just a sound. It was a frequency. Hope wasn't just born, she had been released. Now, as Evelyn typed faster, Lark stepped out of the shadows behind her and whispered, "You shouldn't have brought her back." Evelyn didn't even flinch. "I had no choice." Lark stepped closer. "You've started the countdown." Evelyn turned around slowly. It was already counting down. From the moment she took her first breath. And then, somewhere far above ground, every electrical grid in a 6-block radius dimmed, and the hum grew louder. The air in the hidden lab thickened with tension. Lights overhead flickered, casting long shadows across the cracked tile floor as Evelyn typed in one final string of code. Hope, now nestled in her arms, began to hum again, louder this time. The walls vibrated faintly, and Lark's eyes darted to the monitors behind her. A stream of symbols scrolled faster and faster across the screen. "We don't have time," Lark warned, gripping the edge of the desk. "If the frequency goes full range, they'll triangulate this place in seconds." "They already have," Evelyn whispered. As if on cue, sirens wailed in the distance. Red and blue lights pulsed faintly through the old maintenance grates above the station. The agency had arrived, and they weren't here to negotiate. Lark pulled Evelyn to her feet. "What's the plan?" Evelyn looked down at Hope, whose eyes had turned strangely focused, as if she were listening to something beyond this world. "She is the plan," Evelyn said. Up above, Elaine had followed the signal. With no idea what else to do and no one to trust, she had traced Hope's strange hum using a hacked signal detector app Lark had once shown her when she was briefly in custody. She followed the strange pattern across the city until she stood outside an old utility entrance near Grand Central. The moment she touched the metal door, her phone went dead again. Still, she pressed forward, descending the cold steps into the dark. Back in the lab, Evelyn carefully placed Hope into the last working pod. She was never meant to live here. Not fully. They designed her as a signal translator. A living conduit between frequencies. Lark's jaw clenched. "You're saying she's a transmitter?" "No," Evelyn said, typing faster. "She's a bridge. Between their world and ours." Before Lark could respond, the door exploded open behind them. Smoke and shouting filled the air. Agency operatives in full tactical gear stormed in, weapons raised. step away from the pod. But something unexpected happened. As the agent stepped forward, Hope opened her eyes and let out one soft sound, nothing loud, just a low-frequency hum that vibrated through the air like the hum of the earth itself. One by one, the operatives froze. Their weapons fell from their hands. They clutched their heads and dropped to their knees as if the sound was rewriting their thoughts. Evelyn stood motionless, watching the scene unfold, and then turned to Lark. "She's not just a bridge," she said. "She's a choice." Suddenly, the terminal screen flashed a new symbol, a circular spiral pattern that none of them had seen before. The lab lights surged and then shut down completely. When they blinked back on, Hope was gone. The pod was empty. No broken glass. No sign of struggle. Just a soft, lingering warmth and the faint trace of her hum in the air. Elaine burst into the lab moments later, coughing from the smoke. She saw Evelyn, pale and still, her face wet with tears. "Where's Hope?" she asked, frantic. Evelyn looked at her with tired eyes. "She made the choice." "What does that mean?" Elaine cried. "Where is my baby?" But before Evelyn could speak again, the screen behind them lit up one final time with a single word. "Awakened." Somewhere across the city, 100 different systems flickered. Traffic lights blinked red twice. Cell towers shifted their signal frequencies. Air traffic paused. Everything paused. And then, silence. No one knew exactly where Hope had gone. Not even Evelyn. But from that day forward, those who were part of the project began to disappear, one by one. And the hum? It never fully stopped. In the weeks that followed, the world carried on as if nothing had happened. But for those who had been there, who had felt the silence stretch after the hum faded, everything had changed. Elaine never stopped searching. She walked the streets at night, checked hospitals, talked to people who lived underground or in shelters, hoping someone had seen the baby with the wide, knowing eyes. But no one had. No camera footage, no footprints, no records. It was as if Hope had stepped out of time itself. Evelyn was taken into federal custody, but she didn't resist. She never asked for a lawyer. She just sat there, staring at the ceiling, humming softly to herself. When asked what she knew, she gave the same answer over and over: she chose her path. And you chose yours. Detective Reeves was quietly pulled from the case. The agency classified the entire incident, buried every document, wiped every digital trace of Project Echo. But Reeves couldn't forget. She kept one copy of the photo they'd sent her, the one with Evelyn and baby Hope, and sometimes stared at it late at night, wondering what kind of world they'd nearly opened. Lark disappeared again, but this time, he didn't go underground to hide. He started leaving symbols, the same spirals that had appeared on the lab's monitor, graffitied across cities, etched into subway tunnels, even left on the corners of street signs. People thought it was urban art, but to those who knew, it was a signal. A quiet reminder that Hope was still out there, watching, learning, becoming something bigger than anyone could imagine. And then there were the stories. A baby found in a small village in Nepal who never cried, only hummed. A young child in Senegal who could calm animals with a look. A toddler in Argentina who somehow made every light in her town flicker with just a whisper. People claimed it was coincidence or folklore, but those who had been part of Project Echo knew the truth: Hope had multiplied. She wasn't just one child anymore. Elaine, in time, began to understand that her purpose wasn't just to protect Hope, but to be the bridge back to her if she ever chose to return. She went back to the shelter where she first met Evelyn and started a new kind of work, helping others find missing children, helping mothers who had nowhere else to go. Her heart was still heavy with longing, but something about the silence left behind told her Hope was safe. Somewhere. The city never found out what really happened that night. The power grid was blamed on a temporary system failure. The agents who stormed the tunnels were said to be part of a drill. And the hum? People said it was just subway vibrations. But every so often, on quiet nights when traffic dies down and the air is still, someone hears it. Just faintly. That soft, almost peaceful frequency humming through the concrete and wire. And in those moments, the people who hear it pause, because deep down, they remember. Hope wasn't lost. She was evolving. And maybe, just maybe, she'd return when the world was finally ready to listen.